In Algeria, a bus crash claims dozens of lives in Taman Rasset.
Local residents say the bus was dropping off passengers when a pickup truck rammed into it. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Marcos administration vows to ease commuters' lives via public transportation projects. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. urges the maritime sector to retain its lead in the industry. Seoul to join Washington and Tokyo in nuclear talks against Pyongyang. Donald Trump faces dual court defeats amid an array of legal woes. And Filipino Olympian EJ Obiena, now the world's #2 in men's pole vault rankings. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, and Social Security System, or SSS, announced their partnership to expand operations for Social Security transactions. The two agencies signed a memorandum of understanding to create a framework of coordination in the adoption of the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys. National statistician Dennis Mapa shows his gratitude for the consistent delivery services and transactions of SSS to PhilSys. Social Security President and CEO Rolando Ledesma Macasaet attended the signing with other key officials of PSA and SSS. PSA reported that as of July 2023, over 80,004,098 Filipinos are already registered. On March 22, PSA joined forces with the Department of Social Welfare and Development to use the PhilSys registry for the Listahan, or National Household Targeting System for Poverty Reduction. Agency's partnership will help the PhilSys registry to remove ghost beneficiaries.
The National Economic Development Authority greenlights Ninoy Aquino International Airport's renovations. Vin Pascua tells us more.
National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA Chief Arsenio Balisacan says that the agency's board marked its approval to the Ninoy Aquino International Airport Public-Private Partnership Project, also known as the solicited NAIA PPP project. The Department of Transportation and the Manila International Airport Authority will shoulder the project's cost, worth 170.6 billion pesos. The modernization aims to increase the airport's capacity from 35 million to at least 62 million passengers. Balisacan notes that the project will improve the country's premier airport as it has been facing congestion and power outages. Meanwhile, the NEDA board also approved the unsolicited proposal for the upgrade and maintenance of the Laguindingan Airport in Misamis Oriental. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. pledges to push for more public transportation development projects to enhance the lives of commuters. Eden Santos has the details.
The President makes this commitment during the inauguration of the fourth-generation light rail vehicles, or LRVs, for the Light Rail Transit Line 1, or LRT1.
It truly makes me proud to witness the steady realization of our vision of a more developed Philippines coming into fruition through our new LRVs, which will be used in the existing LRT1 system and on the LRT1 extension to Cavite.
The LRT-1 will deploy one Gen 4 train set on its main line starting 20th of July, increasing daily ridership to 300,000 passengers. The Cavite extension, set to be operational by 2027, will accommodate up to 800,000 passengers daily. It will significantly reduce travel time between Baclaran, Pasay City, and Bacoor, Cavite. President Marcos urges the public to be patient during the construction phase for efficient and orderly operations.
I assure you that this administration will continue to pursue more public transportation development projects that will improve our people's mobility and interconnectivity, as well as to enhance the quality of each Filipino.
Eden Santos for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Marcos administration taps the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development to eye for prospective lands suitable for housing and human settlement. Prince Limonero for the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signs Executive Order 34 that declares the Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino, or 4PH, as his administration's flagship program. Under the signed decree, all government agencies are required to conduct an inventory of the lands they administer and provide a list to the Department of Human Settlement and Urban Development, or DHSUD. This is within 60 days from the release of the directive. The executive order also states that DHSUD shall acquire ownership of these properties and manage their development for the government's housing program. 2022 data shows that the Philippines' housing needs have accumulated about 6.8 million units. Meanwhile, the President expresses his confidence that his administration will meet its goal to erect 6 million units by 2028 under the 4PH program. Prince Limonero, reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. appoints Lieutenant General Romeo Bronner Jr. as the next Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, replacing General Andres Centino. General Bronner previously served as the commanding general of the Philippine Army, bringing 34 years of military experience to the position. He played a crucial role in eradicating hazing in the Cadet Corps while serving as the commandant of the Philippine Military Academy. General Centino, who reached mandatory retirement, is appointed as presidential advisor on the West Philippine Sea.
The Philippine Fleet, or PF, deploys its two newly commissioned missile boats off the coast of Visayas and Mindanao. According to PF, the deployment aims to strengthen the Navy's maritime patrols as well as its capability to maintain the country's internal security. The two new patrol gunboats, dubbed BRP Tinangag and BRP Domingo de Luana, are on their way to the operations of the Armed Forces of the Philippines Unified Commands. The two vessels' names came from both members of the Philippine Marine Corps and awardees of the Medal of Valor. These gunboats were delivered to the country last April 11 and were commissioned last May 26, 2023.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. urges government agencies to collaborate with the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy, or PMMA, to enhance the nation's maritime industry. The President takes part in the 200th commencement exercises of the PMMA class of 2023. He encourages the graduates to maintain their dedication and integrity in their future careers. President Marcos extends his congratulations to the cadets, urging them to become exemplary leaders. He emphasizes that improving skills and capabilities in the maritime sector would lead to beneficial outcomes for the Filipino nation. The Philippines remains a leading provider of seafarers worldwide, contributing significantly to the nation's economy.
The Philippine passport climbs up by 4 spots in Henley Passport Index, or HPI, this year. HPI measures the most powerful passports around the world in terms of travel freedom of citizens from different countries. The Philippines ranks at 74 this year from 78th place last year. The index record shows that the country's highest ranking was at 62nd in 2009 and received its lowest ranking at 80th place in 2015 and 2022. Henley & Partners Managing Director Scott Moore says that increasing 4 spots is a good sign for the growing economy of the country. The Henley Passport Index assesses 199 passports in the world by obtaining the data from the International Air Transport Association.
The Philippine Coast Guard, or PCG, receives a Filipino-built hybrid drone to be used in monitoring the country's shorelines. The hybrid vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL drones, are prototyped by Dodeca's research and development team. Dodeca is a local company with the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines certified remotely operated aircraft system operators. Meanwhile, PCG says that the unmanned aerial vehicle will be used by the Coast Guard Aviation Force in conducting surveillance missions.
Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla announces that the Philippine government will no longer engage with the International Criminal Court, or ICC. Remulla clarifies that the government's rejected appeal was based on courtesy and did not imply submission to the ICC's jurisdiction. He also warns those implicated in the case to avoid traveling to countries where the ICC holds authority to enforce arrest. The Philippine National Police, or PNP, expresses its support for the government's stance on the matter. PNP spokesperson Colonel Jean Fajardo emphasizes that the PNP will follow the lead of the Executive Department and cooperate accordingly. Coming up, American diplomat Henry Kissinger visits President Xi Jinping in a bid to strengthen bilateral ties. Britain pledges another £2.5 billion to invest in a global response force. And former President Donald Trump's legal woes continue. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart.
In today's fast-paced and ever-evolving world, people crave more than just products or services. They also yearn for meaningful and memorable experiences. This desire has given rise to what is known as the experience economy, a transformative concept that has reshaped industries and captivated consumers worldwide. We will speak to the top honchos of the Nexperience Group to discuss their innovative and eye-candy enterprises that push the experience economy as the next big thing.
Restaurants are just there. Cinemas, parang usual na. So, ano yung thing na pwedeng maka-excite sa amin? So, yun yung ino-offer namin.
Dapat talaga madala natin tong mga very unique experiences here and really give it to the Pinoys.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Siya lang naman ang nag-represent ng Pilipinas at nanalo na 5th runner-up sa Miss Grand International 2022!
Si Miss Roberta Tomondo!
Master! Handa na ako makapaglaban.
Hindi ka ba magaling?
Paano ako gagaling?
Hindi ko alam. Kasi ako hindi rin magaling. Kaya ko lang estudyante.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Clashes between opposition activists and security forces result in 1 fatality and hundreds of injuries in Bangladesh. 10 Tens of thousands of demonstrators demand the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina ahead of the upcoming elections in January. The ruling party, Awami League, has been in power since 2009, facing accusations of human rights violations and corruption. The Bangladesh National Party calls for protests across the country to ensure fair elections under a neutral caretaker government. In the capital, Dhaka, and 16 other locations, the marches were reportedly attacked. This resulted in at least 200 people injured and a confirmation of one fatality.
Singapore, a city-state known for its transparency and political stability, has recently been plagued by a string of political scandals. Last week, a senior minister was arrested in a corruption probe, the first in 4 decades to be implicated in such an investigation. On Monday, 2 lawmakers, one of them once tipped as a potential prime minister, resigned after it was revealed they were in an extramarital affair. This casts a shadow of doubt over Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's ability to hand over the reins of leadership. More questions on transparency arose last week when Singapore's anti-corruption watchdog arrested their transport ministers Iswaran and billionaire hotelier Ong Ben Seng. The 2 men played key roles in bringing the Grand Prix to Singapore in 2008. Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong has told local media the corruption probe would be full, thorough, and independent, and that nothing will be swept under the carpet. But authorities only announced the arrest 3 days after they actually took place. Both men have not been charged and are currently out on bail. These arrests were announced shortly after allegations arose of 2 senior ministers renting a real estate in high-end neighborhoods at below market rates. While an anti-graft review cleared the 2 men, K. Shanmugam and Vivian Balakrishnan, of wrongdoing, the matter sparked a heated debate on inequality in Singapore. Over the years, the government has justified 7-figure ministerial paychecks as a way to repress corrupt activity. Singapore is ranked the 5th least corrupt country in Transparency International's latest Corruption Perceptions Index.
For the first time in more than 40 years, an American nuclear submarine has made a port of call in South Korea. And as the USS Kentucky docked in the harbor of the southeastern city of Busan, North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the sea. Arlene Ocampo has the details.
The South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff condemned the North Korean launches. They called them a provocation that threatens peace and stability in the region. U.S. Army Colonel Isaac L. Taylor says the visit by the USS Kentucky reinforces the American commitment to a swift response to a nuclear attack by North Korea. The sub can carry up to 20 Trident ballistic missiles with multiple nuclear warheads. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol boarded the sub for a first-hand look at it. Tensions in the region have risen in recent months because of increasing weapons tests by North Korea and U.S.-South Korean military drills. In April, the U.S. committed to periodic visits by nuclear submarines to South Korea. Arlene Ocampo from Atanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Seoul says that South Korean, United States, and Japanese leaders are due to meet in America next month. Sources say the meeting will be held in August 18 at Camp David near Washington. The trilateral meeting is set to discuss initiatives to counter Pyongyang's increasing nuclear threats. Last week, North Korea successfully tested its Hwasong-18 solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile for the 2nd time. Meanwhile, analysts say that the test represents the major progress for Pyongyang's banned weapons program.
Iran, Russia, and China are building measures to create joint free trade zones. Strategic thinkers believe the power trio defy West-imposed sanctions to create an alternative world order. From Mashhad, Iran, RT correspondent Youssef Jalali tells us more.
So far, free trade zones have not played a dramatic role in Iran's economy, accounting for less than 1% of the country's total export volume. Now, as the Western sanctions have tightened their grip on foreign dealings with Iran, the country has felt the urgency to make the most of its free trade areas.
In our free and special economic zones, we have very good legal stimulus packages. In our free zones, we have a 20-year tax exemption regime. In special economic zones, the tax exemption regime is between 7 and 13 years. Labour laws in free and special economic zones are more lenient compared to the mainland, especially in the free trade zones. We have customs exemption for investors in the import of machinery and raw materials needed for production. All these advantages lead to higher profits for economic activities in free and special economic zones compared to the mainland.
One major initiative Iran is taking to neutralize the sanctions is the establishment of joint free trade zones with its partners, especially China and Russia. Officials say 4 such trade zones with countries neighboring Iran are also on the horizon.
We've negotiated with 21 countries to develop joint free trade zones. Most of these countries are our neighbours. However, further countries such as China are also present in this plan. Joint free zones are a new generation of free zones which are established through the collaboration of 2 or more countries. Out of those 21 countries, we've advanced to signing official political documents for cooperation in the development of joint free zones. With Oman, Iraq, Syria, Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, we've been looking for a location for our joint free zones. In our rail network, we have a number of unfinished sections which the Islamic Republic has been focusing on. These railroads are short, but if we launch them, they will complete the north-south and east-west corridors rail network. Until then, we will use multimodal transportation across our free zones.
Free trade zones are seen as arteries of global transit. Iran is now working to connect its special trade areas located along the Caspian Sea to its southeastern Chabahar free trade zone on the Sea of Oman through a railway that will complete the north-south transit corridor and will literally connect Russia and Eastern Europe to India and Southeast Asia. So Iran seems to be capitalizing on its free trade zones as a means to save its economy from global isolation. Over the past 2 years, the government has been building more airports and wharfs in its free and special economic zones to improve their export capacities. If all goes as planned, the country will expect a 5-fold surge in trade from those money-making regions. Yusuf Jalali, RT, Mashhad.
Chinese President Xi Jinping meets with former top U.S. diplomat Henry Kissinger as the U.S. seeks to strengthen its relations with China. The 100-year-old Kissinger played a crucial role in helping China end its diplomatic isolation in the 1970s. The veteran diplomat's visit highlights the respect he still commands in China. Kissinger's meeting takes place at the Diaoyutai State Guest House, a more intimate venue than the usual Great Hall of the People for meetings with foreign diplomats. The U.S. emphasizes that Kissinger is visiting only as a private citizen.
Chinese and Russian forces begin joint naval and air exercises in the Sea of Japan. The drill comes as a notable display of military cooperation between the 2 countries. It aims to safeguard strategic waterways, and it is the first time both Russian naval and air forces are taking part in the joint exercise. Relations between Moscow and Beijing have strengthened since Russia invaded Ukraine. They have intensified their military collaborations, which include participating in joint military exercises in recent times. The United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, calls for public condemnation of Russia's exit from the grain export deal.
I think countries and leaders near and far should be condemning publicly the decision to withdraw from an initiative that was all about getting food out of Ukraine to the rest of the world.
USAID Administrator Samantha Power explains that 2/3 of the wheat that came out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative went to developing countries. She emphasizes the importance of wheat shipments to countries like Somalia and Kenya. Power also reports that Ukraine's tech sector shows economic growth despite the ongoing war. She said that USAID plans to invest $230 million in Ukrainian businesses to support their economy even more. USAID is also working on renewable energy planning in Ukraine, which is crucial for the upcoming winter.
Protesters set fire to Sweden's embassy in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad. Amid rising tensions, an act of violence erupts in response to the Swedish approval of an assembly to burn the Iraqi flag. The demonstration is reportedly organized by supporters of Muqtada Sadir, a prominent figure known for mobilizing large demonstrations in Iraq. In 2022, Muqtada Sadir supporters stormed Baghdad's parliament building during a political dispute over the prime minister's appointment. Iraqi riot police used water cannons and electric batons to disperse the demonstrators. The Swedish Foreign Ministry has confirmed the safety of its embassy staff.
Britain announced plans to spend an extra £2.5 billion on army munitions and create a new global response force. From the United Kingdom, here's Arabelle Celestino for the details.
Britain's Ministry of Defense said it plans to invest £2.5 billion or $3.3 billion in army stockpiles and munitions to enhance fighting readiness as it takes learnings from the war in Ukraine. It also announced the creation of a global response force, combining its deployed and high readiness service personnel and drawing on capabilities from all domains.
The extra spending and new force follow a £5 billion funding boost to the country's defense budget, announced in March as part of a years-long review of its strategic, foreign and defense policy. It identified the threat posed by Russia to European security as the most pressing short to medium-term priority, but also called China a epoch-defining challenge. Unveiling the refresh detailed in a 92-page defense command paper, outgoing Defense Secretary Ben Wallace said it was focused on areas needing urgent prioritization in an increasingly contested and volatile world. Defense Secretary Ben Wallace announced last weekend that he will step down from his role, held since July 2019, at the next reshuffle of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's ministers, which is expected within weeks. The review of UK defense envisages science and technology playing a bigger role alongside a new alliance with industry. It also plans for a boost in reservist forces for further depth and expertise in times of crisis, as well as changes to soldier recruitment. Meanwhile, the ministry said it will invest £400 million to modernize accommodation for soldiers and their families. Wallace said that the new global response force would draw on expertise of land, sea, air, and space domains and have adversary, not geographic focuses. Wallace also said UK support for NATO would remain ironclad and London will continue to prioritize the core relationships while deepening ties with new partners.
Reporting from London, United Kingdom, this is Arabelle Celestino reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Venezuelan Parliament head Jorge Rodriguez expects the U.S. to hand over extradited former intelligence chief.
Ojalá que Estados Unidos no lo hizo España y debió haberlo hecho. En apego a los tratados de extradición que Venezuela tiene con distintos países del mundo, entregue a Venezuela a un delincuente como es el caso de Hugo Carvajal, que está siendo requerido por la justicia venezolana para que responda por varios crímenes.
Former Venezuelan intelligence chief Hugo Carvajal arrived in the U.S. and will appear in federal court to face drug trafficking charges. The Spanish court ordered his extradition after the European Court of Human Rights rejected his appeal to avoid being sent to the U.S. Prosecutors say that Carvajal coordinated a large cocaine shipment to Mexico in 2006. He denies any involvement in the cocaine trafficking to the U.S. Carvajal is also wanted for treason and terror financing in Venezuela.
Earlier today, Chilean President Gabriel Boric, accompanied by Minister of Science Isa Echeverri, visited the European Center for Nuclear Research, or CERN. CERN is known as the largest particle physics laboratory and one of the largest scientific and technological research centers in the world. Director General of the center, Fabiola Gianotti, toured them around the facility, including a glimpse of their Large Hadron Collider, which Chilean scientists have been using in order to find further breakthroughs in science and technology.
venido a conocer las instalaciones del laboratorio más grande de física de partículas y uno de los centros de investigación científica y tecnológica más grandes del mundo. Una visita en la que fuimos recibidos por la directora general, Fabiola Gianotti, muchas gracias, además por las presentaciones que nos hizo y que nos permitió ver cómo se gestan las nuevas tecnologías a nivel internacional y conocer también el trabajo de nuestros compatriotas, chilenos y chilenas, que abren las puertas a nuestro país para ser parte de este proyecto y de quienes estamos profundamente orgullosos y a quienes les agradecemos de verdad.
Boric also confirmed that in his country, the process to become an associate member state of the CERN signifies his willingness to invest in innovation. This also rings true towards his pledge to substantially increase the budget for science, triple the budget for science for Chile.
Y hoy vamos a tener un nuevo paso en profundizar nuestra relación de cooperación y podemos confirmar con alegría que ya está en proceso la tramitación para que Chile sea un Estado miembro asociado de the European Organization for Nuclear Research. Esto significa un salto importante y es un ofrecimiento que fue conversado con nuestro gobierno en abril de este año.
Pro-independence party Together for Catalonia holds a campaign event ahead of Sunday's general election in Spain. Former president of Catalonia, Carles Puigdemont, blasts the Spanish state, comparing its lack of democratic credentials, and renews a call for an independent Catalan republic. This Sunday's Spanish general election could have a major impact on the country's territorial issue, which the result may decide whether the relationship between Catalonia and Madrid would improve or falter. Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez declared improving the febrile atmosphere in Catalonia a priority when he first took office in 2018 and again when he formed a new coalition government in 2020. With that aim in mind, his administration pardoned 9 politicians who had been jailed for their role in the 2017 regional independence bid.
Temps no serà només per la nostra situació, la personal i la política, en tant que catalans i favorables a la independència de Catalunya, sinó també, molt principalment, com a europeus. Europeus preocupats per les derives que puguin haver-hi en aquest continent que limitin drets fonamentals per capricis polítics. I això és el que està en joc.
Sanchez's government has also engaged in slow-moving talks with the pro-independence Catalan administration aimed at resolving the territorial dispute, a move that the conservative and far-right parties have repeatedly denounced.
Bueno, en este momento lo que los españoles quieren es que la política se centre en las cosas, en la realidad. Porque es cierto que este gobierno, como dicen y tienen razón, ha legislado mucho. Pero legislar mucho no quiere decir resolver los problemas. Las leyes son caminos para resolver problemas, no la solución del problema.
United States climate envoy John Kerry says Washington is not dictating climate solutions to China. This after President Xi Jinping said Beijing will make its own decisions on how to address global warming. Bruce Balmeo reports.
Climate envoy of the U.S. John Kerry speaks during the final day of his 3-day trip to Beijing. Kerry says the threat of climate change requires a new definition of Chinese and American cooperation. China and the U.S., the world's 2 largest polluters, revive stalled diplomacy on reducing planet-warming emissions. Kerry says he and his team had extremely warm and productive meetings with senior Chinese officials during the visit. He says none expressed concerns about the U.S. pushing them on ways to deal with climate change. A day earlier, Xi addressed a conference on the environment in Beijing. There, he stresses that China must chart its own course on carbon emissions. Xi says China must make the decision on its own when it comes to the path, method, pace, and intensity to achieve them, and that no one should expect to exert influence on China. Asked about Xi's comments on Wednesday, Kerry says the U.S. is not involved in dictating anything to anybody but those involved in following the science. The climate envoy says Xi's comments were not reflected in his talks. Kerry met with China's top diplomat, Wang Yi, Chinese Premier Li Qiang, and his climate policy counterpart, Xie Zhenhua. He says there's no politics or ideology in what they are doing. Bruce Balmeo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump is facing 2 criminal proceedings, which could keep him busy well into his candidacy trail for the Republican primaries. Trump has been handed dual court defeats as he continues to face an array of legal woes since leaving the White House. The first ruling made by a federal judge rejected Trump's bid to have his criminal trial in New York State Court moved to a federal court, where he faces 34 felony charges connected to falsifying documents in a hush money case involving an adult film star. On an unrelated note, a federal judge also rejected Trump's request for a new trial following the conclusion of a civil lawsuit brought by the writer E. Jean Carroll. A jury in that case found Trump liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll and awarded her $5 million. Trump has faced a barrage of legal trouble since leaving office. He was indicted separately on 37 federal felony counts related to allegedly hiding and hoarding classified documents he took from the White House. Trump is also the subject of a criminal probe in Georgia looking into alleged efforts to pressure an election official into altering the results of the state's 2020 vote. Recently, the former president said he had received a letter identifying him as the target of a separate Department of Justice investigation into efforts to subvert the 2020 presidential election. The scope of that investigation includes his actions before and during the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Trump is the first U.S. president in history to face either state or federal criminal charges. Up next, a gas explosion injures dozens in downtown Johannesburg. 2 people are killed in a shooting as New Zealand hosts the World Cup opener. And an environmental disaster hits the South American country of Ecuador. Please don't go away. We've got more stories from around the globe when Matanang Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders.
Walang duda na world-class ang galing ng ating mga nurse. Pero ang tanong, bakit tila sa ating bansa, nauubos na sila?
Ang number of nurses na napuproduce ay kulang po sa mga number naman na lumalabas. Posibleng magkaroon tayo ng collapse ng healthcare delivery system.
Dahil na po kulang sa nurses, ang nangyayari dapat yung 1:10, nagiging 1:ward. Aba, hindi na po makatarungan yan doon sa klase ng trabaho binibigay namin.
Sapat ba ang nakukuhang suporta ng mga nurse sa ating bansa? Mag-reality check tayo.
Ay, pagkatapos ng 8-hour duty mo, ewan ko kung pakinabangan ka pa sa dami ng pasyente mo.
Ang hirap na usapin pala nito.
Dock workers on Canada's Pacific coast who had planned to be back on the picket line Saturday have changed their minds. The workers rejected a tentative deal reached last week that ended a 13-day strike. More on that story from Thomas I. Likeness.
It's an on-again, off-again situation. Shortly after the ratification vote on Tuesday, the workers walked off the job. Wednesday morning, the Canadian Industrial Relations Board declared the strike illegal. It says the union failed to give employers 72 hours notice. So then, the union gave the 3-day strike notice, with workers poised to walk off the job 9 o'clock Saturday morning. Now, the union has rescinded that notice. This came after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asked a crisis meeting to look at all options to keep the ports open. The labor dispute has affected 30 terminal ports on the West Coast. It's created a backlog of more than 63,000 shipping containers that business groups say will take months to clear. Many companies have found themselves with shortages because their orders are stranded at port. Some manufacturers have had to lay off staff. Business groups have been pressuring the federal government to intervene and bring some stability to the situation. The union says it rejected the tentative deal because the contract is too long and doesn't address cost of living and job security issues. It says it's concerned about automation and contracting out maintenance work. The Greater Vancouver Board of Trade estimates the dispute has cost the economy $10 billion so far. Thomas I. Likeness from Atanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
German authorities arrest 4 suspects in connection with the theft of valuable Celtic gold coins, estimated value at 1.6 million euros. The coins, dating back to the 1st century BC, were stolen during a night raid at a museum in Bavaria. During the heist, the museum's alarm system was sabotaged, enabling the thieves to make a quick getaway. Authorities say there is strong evidence against the suspects while still continuing investigations. The stolen coins were part of the largest discovery of Celtic gold in the 20th century and have been displayed since 2006.
United States says that North Korea is not responding to verify the state of Private Travis King. King escaped from his military escorts from Incheon Airport in Seoul. The private crossed the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, dividing North and South Korea. U.S. defense officials report that the soldier voluntarily entered to North Korea with one of the most heavily secured borders in the world. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller says that U.S. has no diplomatic relations with North Korea. He added that the department officials were appealing to South Korean and Swedish correspondents to access information regarding the missing soldier. UN command and South Korean military ran direct phone lines to the North Korean military to have daily calls and still received no response.
In Australia, 6 people were rushed to the hospital after a collision between 7 vehicles. A trailer carrying a United States War Games tank is also involved in the vehicle crash. Authorities say among the 6 people, 3 sustained spinal injuries. Meanwhile, the involved tank was due to participate in a major military exercise. The military drills are expected to be joined by 30,000 personnel from Australia, the U.S., and other countries.
An unexplained explosion injures 41 people in Johannesburg, South Africa. The incident raises concerns about underground gas pipes, but the Agila gas company denies any involvement in the incident. Authorities evacuated people in fear of second explosion and a collapse in the multi-story buildings downtown. There were no fatalities reported, however. 2 people still remain in critical condition. The extent of the damage is substantial, leaving the area in a state of distress. Authorities are investigating the cause of the blast, assuring the public that the situation is under control. Emergency teams search for more injured people in overturned vehicles and nearby buildings.
Deep in the southern Sahara region, 34 people are dead after a passenger bus collided head-on with a pickup truck carrying fuel cans and burst into flames. Danica Lee has the details.
The latest fatal crash is reported to be Algeria's deadliest road crash in years. Algeria's Civil Defense Agency says 34 are dead and 12 others injured, many with severe burns. Images show the bus engulfed in flames after crashing around 4 a.m. local time in a small town near Tamanrasset. Rescue workers recovered bodies from the mangled and charred hull of the bus in Otul. Local residents who witnessed the crash say the bus had dropped off passengers and was about to resume its journey when a pickup truck smashed into it. In 2022, Algeria recorded nearly 23,000 road accidents, leaving over 3,400 people dead and more than 30,000 injured. Danica Lee for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
2 people are dead and at least 6 others have been wounded after a gunman opened fire in Auckland, New Zealand. Police say the gunman also died during the incident. Emi Kapili Taroha reports.
The shooting happened around 7:30 in the morning local time at a building in downtown Auckland. Police say the gunman moved throughout the building, firing his weapon. He barricaded himself in an elevator shaft and police tried to talk with him. Police say they heard him fire more shots and then found him dead a short time later. It's not clear if police shot the man or he killed himself. Authorities cordoned off several streets in the area. Few other details have been released. The motive remains unknown. Emi Capilita Roja for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In Scotland, almost 16 million trees have been chopped down to make way for wind farms. According to Scottish National Party, an estimated 15.7 million trees have been cut down since the year 2000. The latest planning framework controls building more turbines with taller and larger versions. The Scottish government, however, has moved to reassure that more trees have been planted, but it is unknown what proportion of mature plants play a bigger role in turning carbon into oxygen. Activists, meanwhile, said that it was ironic that trees are being cut down to make way for wind farms, where both healthy growing forests and renewable energy are important in resolving the global climate crisis. They added that woodlands that are ancient or high conservation value should not suffer from mass fueling because other rare and endangered plants and animals can be lost as well.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warns of the risks of artificial intelligence, saying it can amplify bias, reinforce discrimination, and enable new levels of authoritarian surveillance. Philip Toledo has more.
UN Chief Antonio Guterres urges the Security Council to approach the technology with a sense of urgency. Guterres admits that AI will have an impact on every area of people's lives. He says this includes 3 pillars of the United Nations. Guterres says AI has the potential to turbocharge global development, from monitoring the climate crisis to breakthroughs in medical research. AI, he says, offers new potential to realize human rights, particularly to health and education. However, Guterres says the High Commissioner for Human Rights has expressed alarm over evidence that AI can amplify bias, reinforce discrimination, and enable new levels of authoritarian surveillance.
I urge the Council to approach this technology with a sense of urgency, a global lens, and a learner's mindset. Because what we have seen is just the beginning. Never again will technological innovation move as slow as it is moving today.
Philip Toledo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
An environmental disaster hits the South American country of Ecuador. Ecuador's state-owned oil company is reporting an oil spill along a popular tourist beach. Crisan Fragata has more.
Petroecuador says the spill happened about 4:30 a.m. Wednesday at a terminal in the northern city of Esmeralda. The company says a failure occurred in a relief system as workers transferred light crude oil from a ship. This video shows a long oil slick covering the sand and reaching the tourist beach. A company spokesman told local media the spill appears to be quite significant. He says teams are on the scene to deal with the situation. He says it may have been caused by a lack of maintenance, adding the company will do rehabilitation work in the sea and along the beach. Crisan Fragata for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up. Tata Group chooses the UK as the site for its next gigafactory. ByteDance is set to launch TikTok music. And Filipino athlete EJ Obiena is now world number 2 in the pole vault rankings. Catch the latest in business, sports, tech, and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will be back.
The 2023 Henley Passport Index unveils 2023's most powerful passport. The competition for the spot heats up between 34 countries, featuring the top 10. Singapore steals Japan's limelight as the world's most powerful passport with 192 visa-free access. This allows countries such as Germany, Italy, and Spain securing the second spot, with each allowing access to 190 nations. Meanwhile, Japan, which held the top place for 5 years, has been dethroned to the third spot, sharing with Austria, Finland, France, Luxembourg, South Korea, and Sweden. Tesla CEO Elon Musk indicated that he is prepared to reduce prices on electric vehicles once more, despite the challenging circumstances the company is facing. Tesla is engaged in a fierce price war with other automakers. This strategy is putting pressure on the company's own profit margins. Since late last year, the company has implemented multiple price reductions in the United States, China, and other markets. Additionally, they have bolstered their efforts to diminish inventory by offering increased discounts and other incentives. These strategic measures aim to safeguard the company against both competition and economic uncertainty. The significant price reductions have put pressure on Tesla's automotive gross margin, an indicator closely monitored in the industry. However, Musk has affirmed that Tesla is willing to sacrifice margin in order to prioritize and stimulate volume growth. Tesla reduced the prices of its Model Y long-range version in the U.S. by a substantial quarter, bringing it down to $50,490 this year. Tesla's quarterly automotive gross margin declined to 22.1% in the second quarter, down from 23% in the first quarter. This figure aligned with Street's estimates, but was notably lower than the 26% reported a year ago. Tesla's overall gross margin for the April-June period was reported at 18.2%, marking the lowest in 16 quarters. India's Tata Group will build an electric vehicle battery plant in Britain to supply its Jaguar Land Rover factories. This move would deliver a major boost in UK's car industry, which is in dire need of domestic battery production to help secure its future.
First of all, this is a fantastic vote of confidence in the UK and the UK economy. It's one of the largest ever investments in the UK auto sector that we've seen. It's getting us ready for the future and the transition to electric vehicles. It's billions of pounds of investment and thousands of jobs. So it's great news. But look, there are a range of things that go into a company making a decision like this. And one of them is actually really important. It's the quality of our skills.
Tata said it would build its first gigafactory outside of India in Britain with an investment of £4 billion, roughly $5.2 billion, creating up to 4,000 jobs and producing an initial output of 40 gigawatt hours. During a visit to a JLR facility, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the investment was a fantastic vote of confidence in Britain's economy, adding that the UK had provided targeted investment. Britain has lagged European rivals in building electric vehicle or EV battery gigafactories, with more than 30 planned or under construction across the EU. Britain currently has one small Nissan plant and another in the works.
Fantastic. You just walk around this plant and you see what incredible people we've got. It's about the competitiveness of our tax regime. It's how we approach regulation. And it's about the relationship with the government, making sure that we can support companies like Tata and JLR to make these investments. Those are all the ingredients that go into it and many more. But the main takeaway today is a fantastic vote of confidence in the future of the UK economy.
Production is due to start in 2026 to supply JLR's future battery electric models, including the Range Rover, Defender, Discovery, and Jaguar brands. With an initial output of 40 gigawatt hours, Britain's southern factory would provide almost half of the battery production it needed by 2030, but the Faraday Institution predicts that Britain will need more than 100 gigawatt hours a year by that time.
Look, the UK as a whole is going to benefit because you don't just get jobs created in the factory. As you know, you get jobs created across the supply chain. So thousands of jobs will be created outside of the factory in companies all around the UK as they benefit from this investment.
TikTok is launching a music service to compete with Spotify and Apple Music. Stephanie Mayo has the scoop.
Popular short video app TikTok announced that it was launching a music streaming service in Australia, Mexico, and Singapore called TikTok Music. The expansion comes after TikTok Music was rolled out in Indonesia and Brazil earlier this month. In a company statement, TikTok says it is inviting a small group of users in Australia, Mexico, and Singapore to try the TikTok Music test run. TikTok Music can be synced to a user's TikTok account and, according to the company, will allow users to share and download the music they have discovered on TikTok. The app's music streaming service will compete against Spotify and Apple Music amid TikTok's increasing efforts in music streaming. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Filipino Olympian Ernest John Obiena is now the world's #2 in the men's pole vault rankings. This after Obiena surpassed American Chris Nielsen in the rankings. According to the World Athletics ranking, Obiena currently has a score of 1,432 compared to Nielsen's 1,428. Sweden's Armand Duplantis remains as the world's #1 with a score of 1,569. In a social media post, Obiena thanked everyone who helped him along the way, as his accomplishments are for everyone. The 27-year-old Obiena has been on a roll this year after winning gold in Asian Athletics Championships in Thailand. He has also been qualified for the 2024 Paris Olympics after clearing 5.82 meters in the Bauhaus Gallant leg of the Diamond League in Sweden. An erupting volcano near Iceland's capital of Reykjavik is proving to be a hit with tourists. Curious onlookers are hiking for several hours to see the lava flows up close. Emi Capilita Roja has the details.
The volcano is about 30 kilometers from the Icelandic capital, but there are no connecting roads to the site. That means a 19-kilometer hike for those wanting a close-up look. The spectacle of the red-hot lava has been a draw for tourists from around the world. The volcano is spewing molten ash and clouds of toxic gases. Visitors to the area have been warned to be careful of the toxic air. The eruptions began Monday. So far, they have had no impact on the nearby city or airport operations. Emi Capilita Roja for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
And for your Thursday motivation, here's a quote from Old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra. Take a deep breath, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again.
That's a perfect quote for a rainy day when you're just not feeling yourself. We always have a fresh start.
And though you fail many times, it doesn't really matter. What matters is you get up. You keep
We need to remind
up.
ourselves of that because we're hard on ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.